Welcome to the world of science fiction where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. The mist-cloaked jungles of Vixis exhaled the scent of copper and damp earth as Cal Mercer adjusted his respirator. Around him, the towering bioluminescent trees pulsed like slow heartbeats, their violet light reflecting off his environmental suit. The Victories had forbidden human visitors for centuries, until today. "Remember, no sudden movements," muttered Commander Vera, the only other human allowed on planet. "Their pheromone receptors are 10 times sharper than ours. One whiff of aggression, and they'll rip you apart." Cale nodded, his grip tightening on the diplomatic case. As the Federation's top xenobiologist, he'd studied the Victories for years, a warrior race of all females, their biology shrouded in secrecy. The High Council had only permitted this meeting because their planet was dying. Their sacred, eternal bloom orchids, the source of their longevity, were withering. The stone archway ahead shimmered as the Victory guards emerged. 7 feet tall, their onyx skin streaked with iridescent blue veins, they moved like liquid shadow. The lead guard, her silver eyes unblinking, gestured for Cal to follow. The audience chamber took his breath away. Bioluminescent fungi carpeted the walls, and the air thrummed with a low melodic hum, Victory speech resonating through their throats rather than mouths. At the center stood Ambassador Silria. Cal's pulse spiked. Silria was unlike the others. Her markings glowed gold instead of blue, and her stance held a curiosity the warriors lacked. When she spoke, her voice was a cascade of harmonic tones translated by Cal's earpiece. "Human, you claim you can restore our bloom." He bowed, opening the case to reveal a gene stabilizer. "This can reverse the fungal blight attacking your orchids, but we'll need samples to tailor it." Silria leaned in, her elongated fingers brushing the device, then froze. Her nostrils flared. A tremor ran through her. Cale frowned. "Ambassador." Her pupils dilated, swallowing the silver of her irises. The gold markings on her skin brightened, spreading like wildfire across her collarbones. The Victory guards hissed, stepping back. Silria staggered, clutching the table. "Your scent. It's—" Her voice fractured into a gasp. Then her body changed. Her already tall frame gained inches. The delicate membranes between her fingers thickened into translucent talons. The harmonic hum in the room spiked into a deafening crescendo as Silria's back arched, her spine elongating briefly before snapping back. Cale lunged forward, instinct overriding protocol. "What's happening to her?" The lead guard snarled, shoving him away. "You poisoned her." Silria's hand shot out, gripping Cal's wrist. Her touch burned. "No," she panted. "It's a heat cycle, but we haven't had one in millennia." "Not since." Her words cut off as her legs buckled. Cale caught her, his arms straining under her sudden weight. Her skin radiated feverish heat, the gold patterns now swirling like living ink. The Victories were shouting, their melodic speech devolving into discordant shrieks. Commander Vera grabbed his shoulder. "We need to leave. Now." But Silria's claws dug into Cal's sleeves. "Don't go," she pleaded, her voice raw. "You triggered this. You're the only one who can stop it." The chamber doors slammed shut, sealing them in with the enraged Victory. Cal's mind raced. Heat cycle. Pheromones. Triggered by him. Somewhere in the chaos, Silria's whisper reached him. "They'll kill you for this. Run." But as the guards advanced, weapons humming to life, Cale made his choice. He tightened his hold on Silria and reached for the gene stabilizer. If human biology had awakened this, maybe human science could control it. The device flared to life in his palm, just as the first plasma bolt seared past his head. Cal's lungs burned as he sprinted through the twisting corridors of the Victory temple, Silria's feverish body pressed against his chest. Behind them, the enraged guards' harmonic shrieks echoed off the obsidian walls, their footsteps too fast, too close. "We can't outrun them," Commander Vera hissed, her pulse rifle raised. They know these tunnels. Silria convulsed in Cal's arms, her golden markings flaring like live wires. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her voice barely audible over the chaos. The lower chambers. No guards there. Cal didn't hesitate. He veered left, following Silria's trembling finger toward a narrow passage veiled in bioluminescent moss. The moment they crossed the threshold, the air thickened with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, like blood, but sweeter. The tunnel opened into a cavernous chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. Vines pulsed with faint blue light, casting eerie reflections on the stone. Cal lowered Silria onto a smooth rock, his hands shaking as he checked her vitals. Her skin was scorching. Her temperature's at 42 degrees Celsius, he muttered. If this keeps up, she'll cook herself from the inside. Vera kept watch at the entrance, her rifle trained on the darkness. What the hell is this? Some kind of alien allergic reaction? No. Cal wiped sweat from Silria's brow. It's a hormonal cascade. My pheromones triggered a dormant mating cycle, like a biological failsafe. Silria's fingers clamped around his wrist, her claws pricking his skin. Not just mating. Her voice was strained, deeper than before. Evolution. Before Cal could respond, her body arched off the rock. A guttural sound tore from her throat. Half scream, half harmonic resonance, as new markings erupted across her ribs, swirling like liquid fire. The chamber trembled. Then, from the shadows, something answered. A low, vibrating growl rippled through the cavern. Vera's rifle snapped toward the sound. What was that? Cal's blood turned to ice. Whatever it is, it's not Victory. The creature that emerged was a nightmare of sinew and teeth, a native predator, drawn by Silria's distress. Its 6 eyes reflected the blue vines, its spine tail lashing like a whip. Silria's head jerked toward it. Her pupils narrowed to slits. And then she hissed. The sound wasn't Victory. It wasn't human. It was something primal, something older. The predator hesitated. Silria lunged. Her movements were a blur, unnaturally fast, her talons slashing through the beast's hide like it was paper. Black ichor sprayed the walls as she tore into it, her golden markings blazing. Cal could only stare. This isn't just a heat cycle. She's becoming something else. When the creature lay dead, Silria staggered back, her breath ragged. The glow of her markings dimmed, her body trembling. We need to get her to safety, Cal said. Now. Vera's grip on her rifle tightened. And go where? The Victory will shoot us on sight. Silria's voice was a whisper, the archive of echoes, beneath the temple. Her gaze locked onto Cal's. The answers are there. A thunderous crash echoed from the tunnels. The guards were close. Cal made his choice. He hauled Silria up, ignoring the searing heat of her skin. Lead the way. As they fled deeper into the darkness, Silria's body continued to change. And Cal couldn't shake the terrifying thought. What if she never changes back? The air in the lower tunnels was thick with the scent of ancient stone. And something else, something electric, like the moment before a storm. Silria's body burned against Cal's side as they moved deeper into the darkness, her golden markings the only light guiding them. Behind them, the echoes of Victory guards grew fainter, their melodic hunting calls distorted by the twisting passages. They won't follow us here, Silria whispered, her voice layered with a new guttural resonance. This place is forbidden, even to my kind. Cal's boots slipped on the damp stone. Why? Silria didn't answer. Her claws dug into his arm as another wave of transformation racked her body. Her spine arched, vertebrae shifting under her skin with audible cracks. For a heartbeat, her irises vanished, her eyes becoming pools of liquid gold. Then, just as suddenly, the moment passed, and she gasped like a drowning woman breaking the surface. Vera cursed under her breath. We need to stop. She's getting worse. Cal adjusted his grip on Silria. Not yet. She said there are answers down here. The tunnel ended at a massive door carved with intricate runes. Unlike the rest of the temple, these markings weren't bioluminescent. They were dead, as if whatever power had once fueled them had long since drained away. Sylria reached out, her talons tracing the symbols. "Only the dying may enter," she murmured. Kale frowned. "What does that mean?" Before she could answer, the door moved. Not sliding, not swinging open, melting like black ice under a flame. The stone dissolved into mist, revealing a chamber beyond. The air inside was dry, sterile, utterly silent, and at its center stood a machine. It was unlike any Victory tech Cal had seen. Sleek, metallic, humming with a low, persistent energy. A holographic interface flickered above it, displaying symbols that made his translator earpiece spit static. Sylria staggered forward, her breath ragged. The archive. It's real. Kale caught her before she collapsed. "What is this place?" "A tomb," she whispered. "And a cradle." The machine's hologram flared to life. A voice, neither Victory nor human, filled the chamber. Identity confirmed. Victory Prime genetic signature detected. Hybrid compatibility unlocked. "Welcome, daughter of the first design." Kel's blood ran cold. First design. The hologram shifted, resolving into a star map. A timeline. And at its center, two species, Victory and human, their DNA strands intertwining like serpents. Project Ascension initiated 12,743 cycles ago. The voice continued. Two species, one purpose. Evolution beyond organic limits. The Victory were the vessel. Humanity was the key. Sylria's body convulsed. Golden light erupted from her markings, lancing across the chamber. When she spoke again, her voice wasn't entirely her own. "We were never meant to be separate." The hologram zoomed in, revealing a single, horrifying truth. The Victory heat cycles weren't natural. They were a trigger, a failsafe coded into their DNA, waiting for human contact to activate. And Sylria wasn't changing into a monster. She was becoming what her species was always meant to be. The archive's revelation hung between them like a live wire as Cal helped Sylria back through the twisting tunnels. Her body radiated heat, her golden markings pulsing in time with her ragged breaths. Every few steps, she would stiffen, another wave of transformation racking her frame. "They'll kill you for knowing this," she whispered, her voice layered with something deeper, older. "The Council. They've spent centuries erasing our true history." Kale tightened his grip on her waist. "Then we don't give them the chance." They emerged into the lower temple just as dawn's violet light filtered through the crystalline roof. But the respite was short-lived. A harmonic shriek echoed through the chamber. 12 Victory warriors materialized from the shadows, their plasma blades humming to life. At their head stood High Priestess Phalis, her silver eyes burning with cold fury. Defilers. The word was a death sentence. Kale moved instinctively, shoving Sylria behind him as the circle closed around them. "You don't understand what's happening to her." "We understand perfectly." Phalis' gaze locked onto Sylria's transformed body. "You've contaminated one of our own with human filth." Sylria staggered forward, her talons scraping against stone. "No, I'm becoming what we were meant to be." The warriors recoiled as her markings flared, not just gold now, but streaked with crimson. The air itself seemed to vibrate around her. Phalis hissed. "The corruption spreads. You leave us no choice." The plasma blades surged forward, and Sylria screamed. The sound wasn't just noise, it was a weapon. The shockwave shattered the crystalline ceiling. Warriors collapsed, clutching their ears as blood trickled from their nasal slits. Phalis alone remained standing, but even she took an involuntary step back. Kale stared at Sylria. Her form flickered. One moment the elegant ambassador, the next something more. Wings of light seemed to ghost behind her shoulders before vanishing. "Enough." The new voice cracked like thunder. The Victory parted as Elder Nerix descended the steps, her ancient frame moving with unnatural grace. Unlike the others, she showed no fear of Silria's transformation. Instead, she studied the golden markings with something like hunger. "You've seen the archive," Nerix said quietly. It wasn't a question. Kale nodded. "You knew." "Some of us have always known." The elder's gaze never left Silria. But knowledge without preparation is poison. Her body rejects the change because her mind fights it. Silria collapsed to her knees, her breathing ragged. "It hurts." Nerix turned to Valus. "Call off your hunters. This human doesn't die today. You would spare the defiler." Valus spat. "I would save our future." Nerix's clawed hand hovered over Silria's brow. "The first design awakens. Would you slaughter our salvation because it comes in human skin?" The chamber fell silent. Kale seized the moment. "I can help stabilize her. Human biotech combined with victory gene therapy." Valus's laugh was bitter. "You presume much, mammal." "Enough." Nerix's voice brooked no argument. "The human will attempt his remedy. If Silria dies, you may have his life. If she lives," her ancient eyes gleamed, "the covenant will be rewritten." As the warriors dragged Kale toward the labs, Silria's fading voice followed him. "Don't trust them." But the choice was already made. The machines hummed to life around him, victory and human tech forced into uneasy alliance. Kale's hand shook as he calibrated the DNA splicer. The procedure had a 3% success rate. He'd gambled on worse odds. Across the lab, Silria convulsed on the operating slab, her body rejecting both species now. The golden markings had spread to cover 80% of her skin, pulsing like a second heartbeat. Valus watched from the shadows, her blade still humming. Kale took a steadying breath and began the transfusion. The moment Kale activated the DNA splicer, the world turned white. A shockwave of energy erupted from Silria's body, hurling him backward into the lab's reinforced glass. The machines exploded in a shower of sparks, their delicate programming overwritten by something far older, far wilder. Kale's vision swam. The last thing he saw before blacking out was Silria, floating, her body suspended in a cocoon of golden light, her silver hair whipping around her like a storm. When he came to, the lab was in ruins. Smoke curled from shattered consoles. The air smelled of ozone and burnt metal. And standing in the center of the wreckage was Silria. She turned, and Kale's breath caught. The transformation was complete. Her emerald skin now gleamed with intricate golden patterns that pulsed faintly, like circuitry made of sunlight. Her eyes were no longer just silver. They swirled with flecks of amber, the pupils elongated like a predator's. And when she moved, it was with an eerie, effortless grace, as if gravity itself hesitated to touch her. But the most shocking change was the wings. Not physical, not quite. But there, flickering at the edges of reality when the light hit just right. Like the ghost of something that hadn't fully decided to exist yet. "You're alive," she breathed, her voice layered with harmonics that hadn't been there before. Kale coughed, pushing himself up. "Yeah, surprisingly." He glanced around. The others. Silria's expression darkened. Elder Nerix's lives. Valus and her loyalists fled when the energy surge hit. She flexed her fingers, watching the golden light trail her movements. "They'll be back. They think I'm an abomination." A distant explosion rocked the temple. Screams echoed through the halls. Kale grabbed a fallen plasma pistol. "We need to move." Silria didn't follow. "I can't leave," she said softly. Kale froze. "What?" She turned to face him fully, her new eyes glowing faintly. "The bond between us. It stabilized me, but it also anchored me. To this planet. To my people." She gestured to the ruins. "If I go, the Vixari will tear themselves apart fighting over what I've become." Another explosion, closer this time. The ceiling groaned. Cal's jaw tightened. "So that's it. You'll just stay." Let them cage you. Siluria smiled. It was a sad, beautiful thing. No, but I can't run, either. Then she did something unexpected. She pressed her palm to Cal's chest. Golden light flared between them. And suddenly, he was the one burning. 3 hours later, the escape pod shuddered as it broke atmosphere, leaving the violet jungles of Vixes far below. Cal slumped in the pilot's seat, his body aching, his mind reeling. On the view screen, the planet shrank behind him, and in his veins, something new hummed. He flexed his hand, watching as, just for a second, his fingertips shimmered gold. Siluria's final gift, a piece of her, woven into his DNA, a bond that distance couldn't break. Behind him, the comms crackled to life. Human vessel, this is Federation Cruiser Talon. Identify yourself. Cal took a slow breath, then reached for the transmitter. Cal Mercer, Xenobiology Division. A pause, and I've got one hell of a report to file. As the stars stretched into hyperspace, he allowed himself one last look at the planet disappearing behind him. This wasn't an ending. It was a beginning.